introduction of our very good panelists, and then we'll just try to start when Paolo is going to be here. So first, how do we have to start? From the order, or let's just start from our neighbor, right? Let's just start with Patrick. So, a serial entrepreneur and the director of the strategic development at G2A, a fintech specialist who spent more than 7 years in .pay, and that says a lot about the payments also, and responsible for the business development of the credit tech in the Polish market. So, I just hope that was the right introduction for that.
Yes, briefly, you got all the positions I held and the fintech involvement from early 2000s. So right now we are in a great times. We're building the future of the blockchain, and the fintech will be totally different territories that we're gonna approach. So I'm happy to be here with you.
Very good. So Paolo is also on time. So I really feel like if you guys would introduce yourself, you're more professional at introducing yourself. I will take the rest out of you. So Paolo, if you can introduce yourself, I will just go with the rest.
Paweł Pyskowski, pleasure to be here. I'm CEO and co-founder of CoinFin. We implement blockchain technology for financial sector, but also broader. We provide primarily so-called RegTech solutions, so everything which is technology applied for regulations. Two platforms. One platform is the AML solution for cryptocurrency payments. And second is a little bit more into the authentication of documents and securing that the transaction basically in documents are registered in the right way. So we've been on the market almost 2 years, and I'm glad to be here.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Roger Haenni. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO of Datum. We are a decentralized data marketplace for structured data. So I just gave the talk before, but we started about 6 months ago, and we're building this on top of Ethereum and using our own blockchain on the side. And previously, I have 17 years experience in big data, telecom, and software architecture.
My name is Ki-young from South Korea. I'm a co-founder and head of sales in Aston. I'm here to claim the standardization of ICO evaluation because Korea has banned ICO recently, and I really want to fight for these regulations happening across the globe. Thank you.
Perfect. First, I want to clarify both sides of the aisle, right? So first of all, how many of you guys currently have an open ICO? Good. So how many of you are planning to have ICO maybe in the future or an unforeseen future? So you want to, yes. So that's where I want you guys to understand where we are going to be here. And the other part also, I want you guys to somehow participate a little bit. I'm just going to start with easy questions, and then we're just going to make it a little bit more complicated. So how many of you guys are in the fintech ecosystem, generally speaking, just with a raise of hand? Okay, so you guys are not going to be there, but I really feel like there's going to be more than 10% of the people here. And how many of you have anyhow related to the blockchain? Okay, so I just hope that more people are going to basically be interested into the whole topic. I'm just going to also ask a very easy question: that how many of you think that the whole ICO on the blockchain is a bubble? Okay, so it's a very positive. People, or like we have to basically take these questions out of them in some other ways. So we want to start a little bit not to talk about it as a way of more in the financial sector, but rather from the topic that we're exactly right now here. First, I want to talk about what I asked from the audience, and I want to just try to back into our conversation, that we're not going to have a black and white conversation, right? We're not going to say that, okay, so the blockchain is the future, maybe we say it is, and then we say that there are good ICOs that we already, hopefully at least, like among all you guys, at least we're going to have one or two perfect one of them. So we want to start from the blockchain, that why you think the blockchain is the future, and then we can try to build a conversation around that. So anybody who wants to just talk, and then we can try to just move on.
Yeah, so I think blockchain brings two things to the table, or solves two problems. One is it disintermediates trust. So what that means, if you're a group of people that wants to achieve something or has a common goal, but you can't really trust one single actor in that group, you can use blockchain to solve that. The other thing is through building systems that incentivize users of your ecosystem. So that's where the tokens come into play. So it can be a way to reward people that run this network, that run the blockchain for you, and also then provide utility to the participants of that blockchain.
And maybe I can ask Pavel, especially because of his background in a more fundamental part of that. How much do you think that a coin-based blockchain is important for the whole blockchain industry?
Wow, that's a complicated question. No, I think that the incentive part, what you mentioned, is actually quite important. So that's why, you know, at the end, blockchain it's primarily around exchanging value, right, in a secure way. So the coin is more the reflection of this, you know, or you know, its visibility of basically what is kind of, you know, value which is being exchanged, because everything at the end is value. You know, like we have like basic attention token. So your attention could be, you know, transformed into certain value, and the coin is the reflection of this particular, you know, value. So this is the coin is basically almost necessary for blockchain ecosystem, which is not supported by big players, but you know, is basically by the community. Is almost, you know, you need to have the coin to exchange this kind of value and to create the network. And you know, this is also a great reconciliation process, right? So transparency, you know, brings transparency, bring trust, and etc. and etc. And so everything what you would hope for, you know, in the traditional financial sector would be there, right? And the coin is, as I said, you know, it's a full reflection. Obviously, you need to have regulations which are, you know, talking about AML, right? You know, my favorite topic. Anti-money laundering, counter-terrorist financing, which you need to, whenever you exchange value, you need to think about this kind of aspects. But at the end, it's, you know, coin is just reflection of the value which would be otherwise, you know, transported.
Okay. But I mean, I basically asked because you have true Datum, that it's not somehow related to the, you know, like to the coin-based transactions via blockchain, and also the AML part of that is somehow related. That was basically
but there is underlying, which is, you know, still a coin. So there is still underlying. You know, we slightly use this in a different context, but we, for every, you know, every document which we sign, we burn tokens to do this. You know, so it's kind of, you know, this is the way you would.
And also for Patrick, because you, first of all, you have an experience in the payment systems for a long time. And at the same time, also yesterday we saw another very interesting presentation about having more than 200 different methods of payment. But at the same time, right now the blockchain is at least claiming to be the future of the payment. So how do you see this transaction or the transition between from right now to where we're going to see ourselves in the future?
Right, so first of all, I'm just quite new to the blockchain. My colleagues here are raising the business based on blockchain. What we are trying to do, and I personally want to adopt the existing businesses and the existing problems versus the blockchain. Right? So what we can address, what the problems we can solve in many areas of the business. It's trading, it's trust, it's debt documents, a lot of things. And currently we are investigating how we can do it at G2A in the marketplace. So marketplace is one thing that, okay, matter of trust, so there are parties. And ultimately if we adopt blockchain in a way that it should be, so with when we exclude third parties, you could say that the marketplaces, such places like marketplaces, shouldn't exist. So we're trying to adopt it in a way that fintech, all the financial transactions become seamless, and blockchain allows that. We have different layers of that. So there's a security, there's a speed of transactions, there's a, you know, formerly it was escrow, so it's kind of an escrow, smart contracts conduct this feature. So for me, also the blockchain, or not even bitcoins, but all the alternative coins could be kind of a carrier between all other payment methods. And for us, we grew the reach of G2A by accessing the markets which are underbanked sometimes. For example, in India, we go with a physical code distribution, yeah, and pay and delivery. So I think blockchain is also good in a way to reach the countries which are underbanked. So it's like a leapfrog for many countries. For example, in Africa, they are already doing the mobile payments. So for them, it's really easy to adopt the blockchain technology if it's delivered in a very easy way. This is what our mission is right now, to adopt it in a way that everyone can use it. Not many people from fintech, from the industry, trying to figure out how to adopt blockchain, and I don't know if maybe 15% of people really know how to use it. Yeah, and I'm still also learning.
Okay. I mean, talking about different markets in different countries, I was just trying to talk to Kim because we were talking about the fact that you moved from South Korea to a different market just in order to adapt yourself with the regulations. So I was just wondering about two different parts of the question. One would be about the idea of why do you think some governments are somehow having problem with an ICO and some do not have that? And the other one, because we have a good diversity of the people from their background, where do you think would be the best place for the time being to be as an ICO? So first you can talk about your personal experience and all the the complications that came up with it. And the second, how do you recommend it? And then we can try to just pass it to other people in the panel.
Okay. 1 year ago, Korea did not regulate ICOs. Actually, they were very positive to accept the ICOs and Bitcoin cryptocurrencies into Korean economy. But all those damages from the frauds and the scams that they have stole money from the ICOs because they didn't have much framework for a guideline for an ICO. So there were a lot of money lost in the midst of the ICOs, and that's why the government kicked in to have those regulations. So, but it's not that they are not limited to participate in ICO in Korea, but a lot of companies are going out to foreign countries to have their foundation in other countries in order to start this ICO. And that is not a big problem at all right now. The second question, as you said, I think Estonia or Ukraine would be the best place to have ICO because we had a lot of consultations with law firms in Switzerland and Singapore, but many of them has still skeptical about these ICOs, and they are actually freezing the bank accounts of the companies that are having ICOs without complying the guidelines suggested by the government.
Okay, I mean, I think maybe probably because you just came back from Singapore, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
so maybe you can also just have some more insight to that.
So last Friday, they published MAS published the regulator in Singapore. They published kind of guidance for token issuance. So worth looking. I think it's so far as the best or the most light touch regulations which you can see. And I met with the regulator in Singapore. And from what I saw, the knowledge which we have is really good. And I think in many countries, lack of knowledge is the main problem, because it's kind of if you call someone coin, Dascoin is not anything which would be related to. So anyone who is investing in Dascoin, stop it. Don't do it. It's not cryptocurrency. It's a scam. It's basically that you call someone a horse. It's not necessarily a horse. So basically, it's I think this is something which when you have knowledge in terms of regulator and the market which is grown into the certain decision making. I think it's a matter of basically having good product and good idea behind the project. I think Singapore is good. Similarly, Gibraltar is really moving into the space. Switzerland, I'll stay away from Switzerland, and Ukraine. Well, I think also. So I wouldn't be so. You need somewhere when you can actually rely on certain way of approaching things for generations, as opposed to weeks or on months. So I think
As we're in Poland, you can also mention at least like on a positive or a negative way. How do you see Poland also?
Well, we had announcement on the KNF, which is the Polish regulator, announced that you need to be careful when you do, because there's some projects which are not good. But the most worrying part is the Polish central bank, which is national Polish bank. So this is something which is more into the we believe in blockchain, but we don't want to see cryptocurrency. Well, it doesn't work this way, right? So it's something which is
worrying. This also came back from the World Bank. So, if that would be the case, I wouldn't be very much worried about what is happening in Poland, because we exactly heard the same thing from the.
But it's more, when you are, saying this to the market, that you need to be, or to the other regulators, you need to be careful about this particular subject, and more when you say to the market, be careful, we don't support anything which is happening. It's stopping basically innovation, and these projects are all about innovations. So sometimes they innovate to collect the money from the market, which you should avoid, but it's better to
If you don't mind, because we had a lot of things about Switzerland, I just want to give a little bit of a few minutes for at least for our Swiss friend to defend it or just accept it. Right?
Yeah, so I'm from Switzerland. Our company is based out of Switzerland, and so we are running our ICO from Switzerland. I think what is special in Switzerland, that a dialogue with the regulator is possible. They actually have an email address, and if you send an email there, you actually get a response within 24 hours. So I would challenge other the right locations to have this kind of responsive regulator. Then there's also a bit about the mechanics, how it works in Switzerland. So the big question in any jurisdiction is what is considered a utility token and what is considered a security. So in Switzerland at the moment, if you plan to do a token sale, you basically deposit your intention with the regulator. You tell them what you want to do, and if you think it's a utility or a security. And you're basically waiting to try and get some sort of comment or statement out of them. And this has happened for the first few projects now. And so in our case, we have also deposited our intention maybe about 2 months ago. So we're expecting to get a response soon. In terms of whether they would consider our token to be a utility, or whether certain parts or mechanisms of our token could be considered a security. Regarding the banking situation in Switzerland, I think some places were named, like the Estonia or Lithuania. A lot of the cryptocurrency exchanges are also there, and a lot of ICOs have done some banking there. It's then just the question, how well is that money integrated into international finance, right? Is it considered offshore or not? And so for us, it was we actually didn't. So we are a Swiss company, and we're based in Switzerland, but we looked at all sorts of different jurisdictions, and for us it was important that we're in one of the big financial markets, which Switzerland certainly is. Regarding the banking, this is actually driven by the banks in Switzerland and the risk management of the banks, so shutting down or freezing of accounts at the moment. Initially, some of the Swiss banks did some of the very large ICOs, and there has been some concerns raised about that. So banks have taken a step back and are looking if this is really a business that they want to be in. And of course, from the bank's perspective, if you just come with your ICO and put 100 million in a Swiss bank, there's actually negative interest rates, right? So it makes no sense to take on risk for a bank, just to put your money there. And then I think last but not least, there's also a bit of discussion about the tax at some point. So I haven't heard many ICOs talk about this, but certainly next year in any country, right, the tax man will come and ask, okay, so what did you guys do here? So of course, Switzerland traditionally has some very favorable tax treatments. So I think that is also pretty important. And I do expect that to be a central kind of driving factor next year for companies looking to do an ICO. The question is going to be what is the tax treatment, and just consider this: if you're selling a utility token, so basically you're not selling equity, it's not debt, it's not shares of something. Effectively, you're selling a service or a product, and in almost all countries you have to pay tax on that. And
Very good. Yes, yes, please.
I would like to add one thing because there is no recipe that Switzerland is good or Singapore is good. I'm drilling into the subject for like the past 6 weeks. So I went to Mexico, to one of the largest the Ethereum Foundation convention. And when I was flying there, I was totally sure that Switzerland is a place to launch ICO. And when I was coming back, the jurisdictions changed 5 times. Yeah? So I heard, okay, Singapore, and also Singapore, Panama, Cayman Islands. Yeah? So it depends on the size of the company and the place you are in. Yeah? Because if you're a startup of 3 students, yeah, talented, and you want to change the world, go for Caymans. Yeah? There's no reason to go to Switzerland, which is right now over-regulated. Even for the companies like us, we encounter big difficulties in being compliant. Yeah? So this is one thing. Germany lately, yeah? Germany said, okay, we're going to accept ICOs and cryptocurrencies. So it all depends what type of business you want to run. If you really want to be a disruptor, game changer in a way. So it's very dynamic. It changes almost every day. So some countries ban it, like Korea. Some countries say, oh, okay, our neighbor banned it, so we do it. So like in China, so Japan went up, yeah, when China banned ICOs. So there are a lot of things which are we need because there are also the jurisdiction doesn't cover you from being security. Yeah? So, for example, token. When you release a token, you can be in Switzerland or in Singapore could be token with a utility, but in US they might consider it if there's a face behind it. Yeah? If there's a face, like if Apple if Tim Cook is a face of the product of ICO, then it's considered as a guarantee of the financial success. So you need to also be careful about what you do because there's no jurisdiction which says, okay, this is globally covered and you don't have any issues. Yeah, this is what you also investigate.
Good, thank you. We're going to have another question about the regulatory, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about usability of that. What do you think the current situation that the world of cryptocurrency is somehow being regulated by people outside of the ecosystem is the right approach? Do you really feel like a centralized way of putting the decisions and the centralized way of thinking about a totally decentralized ecosystem would somehow adopt itself, or you really feel like maybe this ecosystem also have to be internally regulated or somehow try to find its own way without even being related to that? Because when you're touching some topics like taxes, when we're talking about some other topics about the world of, I don't want to call it cryptocurrency, the world of the blockchain, when everything is decentralized, and we also have lots of coins and lots of usability that they are helping with anonymity. So if we're going to have an old school system of recognizing things based on some centralized old school method of collecting data, how do they have to adapt themselves, and do they even have the knowledge in order to regulate a market that is totally unknown to them? So
I think that's an interesting question, and from what I saw, there's definitely, we are running an initiative which is basically trying to create standards around anti-money laundering for cryptocurrencies around the world. And so far, we have very good response and very good engagement from the regulators, from market, from people who are like ICOs, etc. So it seems like there's even though that this is, I think this is the only panel on initial coin offering doing this, and we are talking only about regulations, which is me being a lawyer and former compliance officer. It's incredible because suddenly the starting point for any business is how we structure the regulations and how we ensure compliance. So I think this is the way to approach this market is changing dramatically. So we see initiatives, and also one of the conversations, so which law you're going to apply for something which is truly global, right? So it's probably going to be some renaissance of international law, maybe, or arbitrage law. This is something would be, which would be probably seen, on the market because, as you said, you can be non-security in Switzerland, but you can be completely security in the US, right? So that's definitely something which is going to be interesting. Yeah.
Good. if any one of you guys have another comment, because I want to go a little bit deeper into the conversation and talk about the usability. We're talking about the idea that, for example, right now we have one currency and we have some specific platforms that everybody knows and everybody know how to compete and how to use it. But when we're talking about, I don't know, maybe like 3 years, nobody, I don't know if anybody knows exactly how many ICOs are going to be in like 2020. Because looking at like what we had in 2016 and what we have in 2017, that would be a very funny number to just talk about what we have in 2020. We're always talking about Golem with the massive success of like $8 million, and right now if you look at the amount of investment that they have, up to like $200 million, and as I always say to people, like this is just the beginning. So if you really think about like 2015 and 2016 and 8 million as a phenomenon and 200 million, where do you think the usability of these coins are coming? Like how, I remember at G2A we're talking about like 200 different methods of payment, and they are all somehow are in a way that you can work with all of them. But now think about all of these coins and technologies that they are working parallel to each other, and even the technologies are not somehow internally connected to each other or they can support each other. So how do you see this? I'm just calling it a chaotic, not as a chaotic as a way of just putting a disaster, but as a way of lots of people just doing things parallel to each other. How do you think this market is going to be more, again, not from a legal point of view being regulated, but from a practical point?
Okay, so it will be very similar to what happened in the early VCs. So there were like a lot of companies were raising money, especially in Silicon Valley. So like it was very easy, 5 years ago to raise $5, $10, $100 million. Also referring to the internet world, it was even easier. So right now I think this ICO market is growing very rapidly. It's like no other business I ever seen. So those ICO which were launched 1.5 years ago, they will have to deliver at some point. And there are only few which have a logical sense of being there. So you have 1,200 currencies at the moment, and there are over 300 ICOs. 300, there are different sources because the official 300, upcoming this year 200 more. So imagine how many of those projects will really succeed. So this is one thing. This market will probably will self-regulate because investors will learn how to recognize the good ICO, like our colleague showed us a few slides today. So it will be more towards like a stock exchange, I believe, and the quotes, the amounts of money which were raised. For example, in August, one of my friends raised like about $53 million. It's not possible now. You need to really have a good track record, good advisory board, a lot of knowledge behind you, and a really disruptive project to raise more than 10 million. And there are companies across the globe which are already established, and we don't talk about those companies who didn't succeed in ICOs. We only talk about the stars. Yeah? And so I think it's going to be like organically, it's going to self-regulate. The good guys, the people who want to change the world, they will succeed. But the numbers, I think, will go lower generally. But you have stars like Overstock, they want to do $500 million ICO. And the other problem is, okay, you can raise $200 million, $300 million, but if you don't have a really point of doing that, okay, any system, any complicated system can cost like $20 million, $30 million. So what you're gonna do with 200, 250, yeah? You're gonna spend it for marketing? No. So it becomes to be like you cannot compare it to the real life, yeah, real business, because there are, okay, if you create infrastructure, land-based infrastructure, I don't know, fiber, a lot of things which is consuming a lot of capital, or building roads, okay, but then blockchain, because reason to do ICO is actually use blockchain, yeah? And the other thing is that there is something different on the IPO scene. You have to treat the crowd properly. The crowd, so John Smith, who invested $5 into your ICO, can make a lot of mess. So you need to know how to deal with that, with the heat in the internet. And not many companies are aware of that. So I'm also investigating that part.
Very good. I was just wondering if Roger can also try to talk a little bit about usability.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the reality is that many ICOs have gone out there with these big visions. Blockchain is going to be the revolution. But if you look right now in reality, real applications of blockchain, so of course you can transfer Bitcoins, but outside of payments, so these decentralized apps that many ICOs are pitching, there's very few of these systems that are actually live. And the ones that are, they mostly have really bad usability. So even on Bitcoin, it takes over 15 minutes to make a transaction. And then depending on your use case, it takes hours for that transaction to be confirmed. So what that really means is unless there is a very important reason why you need to use blockchain. Blockchain is actually one of the most horrible development environments. So specifically, everyone is talking about smart contracts. Every time you want to call a function in your smart contract, anytime you want to run business logic, you have to pay for this. And on top of that, even on Ethereum, a transaction takes anywhere between 30 seconds to 1 minute. So just imagine the last time you were using an app on your mobile phone and you had to wait 1 minute for something to happen. So that's not really good usability. So that needs to be solved, and some of the huge projects, EOS, Tezos, they have said, oh, so we're going to have, support millions of transactions per second or whatever number, so we'll see if they're able to deliver on that, but a solution is definitely required. And the other big thing for me is the integration of the ecosystem, right? So in the .com bubble, it was all about internet and these projects also being able to interact in a way. And so with blockchain, we're just in the first stage of that happening. And personally, I feel this is going to be very important next year, right? So if you think of all these projects, there's a token for everything nowadays, right? There's a token, you can buy food with a token to go to the toilet, and so on. Literally everything has already been done. But you as a user, you're not going to have 1,000 tokens in your wallet and use all these tokens for all these specific purposes. So personally, I believe this is all going to be transparent at some point. So once it goes into the mass market, the infrastructure may be powered by the token, but you as an end user may not be directly exposed to this token. And so this needs a lot of things to be developed in the blockchain ecosystem, things like decentralized exchanges, because these projects don't want to exchange tokens through one centralized exchange that takes a spread on that and makes money on that. And there are ICOs that are trying to solve these problems, but it's all very early stage. So I think next year will be very interesting to see how can we move forward and actually make this technology, make blockchain fit for the mass market.
Thank you. We want to put the last 5 minutes for the questions, but we have one question, and I thought that somehow we can try to make this question as another general question to public. No, keep your microphone, or just, you can run away from this question. Because we're talking about regulation, and especially regulatory from inside the market. Because the question was basically about the ban of the ICOs and the exchanges that are banned right now in South Korea. I didn't want to go back to the details of that because there are so many different exchanges with so many different things, and we only have 40 minutes in order to start and finish the conversation. From random ICOs that basically just disappear from the Bittrex without giving any notification, up to some exchanges like Kraken that they were just on and off for the past few weeks and nobody really knows what is happening, all to like those exchanges that are in China or in South Korea. So it's a matter of, let's just maybe after the whole MMC we can sit down here for another 8 or 10 hours, just try to sit down the whole night and finish it. But I was trying to just see if we can somehow find the middle ground. All the ICOs, regardless of being centralized or decentralized, regardless of what they do, they're all having one bottleneck, and that's where the exchange is basically happening. So do you think maybe exchanges could be used as a tool for regulatories? Like not as a government or as a way of just trying to push some political parties to that, but rather from the usability point of view. So if we can try to really see that some people that they are the market leaders, they can try to say that this ICO, it's a freedom of speech, that you can do whatever you want, but I would say all of the ICOs that are going to be regulated by us, they cannot trade this type of ICO because there is no technology behind it, or there is no usability behind it, or there is no person behind it that could create this type of technology into a usable thing. So I was trying to first start with you regarding your experience based on 2 different countries, from the Singapore and South Korea, and then we can try to see how we can try to challenge the same.
So in Korea, the best thing they do is that they look for use cases in foreign countries and implement it in Korea. And that's all what always have been done. But right now they are trying to figure out what is the influences that Bitcoin is bringing to South Korea. And I think those usabilities are not coming to the market because of the regulations they have put already. And they need the use cases as to define if this is wrong or not, right? So I was thinking, why not they just let the Bitcoin used by people so they can have use cases and so they can have examples of what is wrong and what is good. And I'm not really sure about Singapore because we just have founded the company in Singapore, and I have heard that Singaporean government has frozen 10 bank accounts for those ICOs. And I think Singapore is having an idea of how cryptocurrency is gonna affect to their economy, but they just want to prevent that some catastrophe happens before this happens. I think the market leaders from the IT companies around the globe should put a step into this cryptocurrency market so we can actually discuss about the usabilities of these cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, and sorry, just regarding your question, right, can exchanges be sort of a regulator? At the moment they're doing a little bit, so they have delisted a lot of tokens that look like securities, but in reality there's already decentralized exchanges that are running that can't be regulated, and even the projects themselves can't stop their token from being traded there. So I don't think that is feasible, right? Next year there's going to be many more decentralized exchanges, so even if there is exchanges with large volume that are centralized now that could regulate, we're just going to move to decentralized exchanges instead.
Yeah, but even we're talking about, for example, a Kyber network that is a decentralized exchange, but is somehow associated with Vitalik, so we can say somehow associated with the Ethereum Foundation. And as most ICOs are somehow based on Ethereum, and as we have already an Ethereum Foundation, that at least they can try to qualify your tokens. So if there is a decentralized way...
So I think Vitalik, as stated before, I think they will never take a regulatory role, and this goes directly against the idea of the blockchain. That's not the responsibility of the technology to regulate. Yeah.
I would add one thing about the exchanges, because I think those exchanges will also self-regulate. I don't know if you know that, but for each transaction, so if I'm an exchange and I'm listing the token, which is security, for each transaction being made on this token, regardless I'm not the owner of this ICO, I get a penalty, and this is a big penalty in the US, and it adds up. So I heard people get like 300 years or more sentences, the CEOs and the executives of the exchanges. So right now they are really the biggest ones, which are like faces. So those who are not decentralized, but those who are recognizable by management team, they are really reluctant to list new tokens because there's no like a fixed regulation for them. So and also being a successful ICO, you need to have a liquidity. So you need to have a exchange. You need to be listed.
As much as I want to just follow this conversation, but I'm looking at the time also. If you don't mind, because there is one question for you, and that's also about the payment in the G2A with the Bitcoin. So because I know that you're accepting the Bitcoin, so they just want to know, it's kind of like a hybrid between like what we're discussing and the old school method of payment. So they're asking for your experience, basically, how it works for you right now.
Okay, so we implemented Bitcoins like 2 years ago, and when the Bitcoin exchange rate was pretty flat, because there was a time when it was flat, we saw really big adoption of Bitcoins, especially in the gaming scene, also between the merchants. But when Bitcoin started to ramp up, and when it started to be a speculation tool, so today somebody could buy a game for $20, but in the evening, in the morning, in the evening the same game could be worth $28. Yeah? So we see, as Bitcoin is ramping up, we see that people are not so keen to pay with Bitcoins. because they want to keep them for future, future incomes. So I wait till all the other altcoins will be more flat, like Ethereum. Ethereum is quite flat because you use it for ICO when you collect money, but you also have the ICOs cashing out. So it goes up and down, but it's around $300 all the time. Okay, I mean, okay, because right now there's enough, but for past 6 months it was 280 to 350, something like that.
Thank you very much. Guys, just in order to wrap up the whole thing, first of all, blockchain is coming, cryptocurrency is coming, and as these things are coming decentralized, so we have to understand that there is no way to stop them because there is no one way for them to come in. So just to make it a little bit less complicated and a little bit less boring also, I mean, I would love to just say 3 coins, but unfortunately one of them I'm not sure at this stage I can talk about it, but one of them is the useless Ethereum token, and the other is Fit Vitalik. But I would really encourage you to look at these things, because this is for me a kind of a comedic part of how basically the whole ICO world can work. And if you go with this, I hope you're going to find the third one. I wish I could discuss it, but unfortunately not sure if it's in the stage to talk about the other one. Just to basically say, even the most funny story right now can get funding much better than what you really want to go and try to talk to any other investors and get funding. So you have to understand that there is a potential here. The other point that is very important is, first of all, try to understand the world of financial market. It is going to be disrupted either by the technology or by the means of transferring the data and the knowledge by that. We have the example of these people are right now on the panel. So this is up to us in order to see if this money is going to basically go into real technology, if this money is going to basically bring the real value, or this money is just going to bring the first person who is going to come, first come, first serve, right? And they're going to take advantage of that. And hopefully we're going to see more and more real players. And at the same time, we would see not try to put more regulations and make things harder for people, but rather try to show them what would be the best ideas and try to address the public in order to use these coins and these technologies by the real potential, not as a way of just making some quick money. So I would just try to say thank you. If anyone, if you guys just want to say one word, we can just try to wrap it up, just to finish it with less than 1 minute of delay, so please.
I think this was a really interesting conversation, and I really enjoyed it. And happy I didn't know that G2A is actually transferring Bitcoin, but I hear that
you want to go the AML right now after that, just to finish
it.
it.
So it's definitely so. No, I think it's going to be impacting. The whole market will be changing. But if you look at the blockchain area, it's effectively 2 years, so it's just kicking off. And we're gonna see more and more projects and more things coming out.
Yeah, very good.
And for those of you who want to raise money and you had experience with the VCs and other financial tools, definitely ICO is the way to go. But be careful. Yeah, don't travel that much to US so far until it gets totally regulated. So yeah, it's for me it's a really game-changing fundraising method.
Roger.
Yeah, so I think I briefly mentioned before, I think for me the real usability lies in things like Ethereum with smart contracts, right? I mean, the exchange of value just with Bitcoin is interesting, but on Ethereum we're building new markets, right? All these tokens. And I'm really excited about the prospects of that and where that will go. Yeah, and so I'm very bullish on Ethereum.
Thank you.
I believe in blockchain, and I believe that this will change the world, how it looks like right now. And I think we have to protect our ecosystem from the frauds and the corruptions to actually have these technologies into our lives. So please spread the word. Thank you.
Great. So yeah, we can finish the whole thing with I believe in blockchain, right? So as a new religion. Thank you very much for all of your time, and thank you very much for just listening to us. So you can just give a round of applause for all of the panelists. Thank you very much.